Hello and welcome to day 2 of Sibos Spotlight sessions, a series of individual passionate presentations with top speakers and experts creatively tackling topical industry issues, stimulating debate and facilitating a wonderful exchange of ideas. My name's Oisin Lunny. I'm a journalist, conference MC and host of the Siemens Advanta and Harman Audio Talks podcasts. It's great to be here again. I hope you're enjoying your Sibos. Now, we're dealing today with the theme of cybersecurity, which is absolutely such a big deal. And one of the most memorable examples or memorable illustrations of the importance of cybersecurity that I've heard actually came to me from a gentleman who was a cybersecurity expert at a conference a few years ago. And he said the problem with companies and how they look at cybersecurity is they think of the analogy of your car alarm. And it's good to have an alarm on the car just in case somebody happens to be walking past and they happen to decide to try and break into it and the alarm goes off and it's all safe. And it's very much, an occasional episode. And he said that is not the case in cyberspace at all. In cyberspace, it is the equivalent of having an absolute man in the boot of your car 24/7, and he's got a chainsaw and he's trying to saw into your back seat, and he is absolutely relentless and he never gives up. This is the thing about cyber attacks. There is no respite from cyber attacks whatsoever. So it's so important to have the right staffing to deal with this 24/7, 365 problem, particularly in banking and financial services. Now, we're going to look at the cyber resource problem today and ask the question, the bold question, is it totally unsolvable? Well, I have an answer I'm hoping for, but let's wait and see what our expert speakers say. And it is really the case that in cybersecurity, one of the largest macro level risks is not just those nutters in the boot of your car with the chainsaw, the criminal gangs. It's the fact that there's not enough qualified resources within most companies to deal with it. And as you're going to find out, I suspect during the course of our amazing guest speakers, you're going to hear that there's a massive shortage of skills in cybersecurity, and it's kind of incumbent on us to solve this problem and to involve the right partners and right methodologies to do so. We're going to ask the question for the long term. Is this untenable, and how do we look for alternative answers? So education programs that build from grassroots, encouraging women in cyber, and internal cross-training or sharing resources across institutions. But are all these measures enough? Or is this totally unsolvable? We're going to ask this question again and again, and we have some brilliant people to help us answer. And it's a great pleasure to introduce to day 2 of Sibos to our stage right now, the director of Amazon Web Services, a very brilliant individual who's going to, I suspect, educate a lot of us out there, myself very much included. Please welcome to Sibos Spotlight, Jonathan Allen.
Hello. I've worked at Amazon for nearly 4 years. And before that, I worked for a global retail bank for 17 years, with my final role there as a divisional CTO. As such, I've been pretty privileged to see both sides of the fence on this seemingly intractable problem. So what have I learned in that time? Firstly, we know that there are not enough humans skilled on the planet to currently fill the cyber talent gap. So we need to think about this challenge differently. We need, as we like to say in Amazon, to innovate out of a corner. Now, back in 1997, this was the first website for Amazon.com. Jeff Bezos wrote the HTML himself, and this is his legendary door desk, emblematic of Amazon's leadership principle of frugality. Basically, it was a wooden door held together with 4x4s. Of course, in those early days, Amazon was not a sure thing at all. In fact, the early 2000s, Amazon was struggling greatly with speed and time to market. Engineers and developers would spend months just building out the infrastructure and the security before they even started to be able to code the product itself. After diving deep on this problem, Jeff and the other leaders decided on a radical way forward. All teams would be split into 2 pizza teams with autonomy and accountability, and they would both publish and leverage each of the team's APIs to communicate. This allowed them to finally spend their time innovating, not solving the same infrastructure and security challenges over and over. Nearly 20 years later, Amazon now has 1 million employees, all still organized into highly autonomous 2-pizza teams. Now, how do you ensure at this scale folks focus on the right things? Well, you use principles. In fact, so far in this talk, we have mentioned frugality and dive deep, which are just 2 of the 14 principles that binds Amazonians together. In addition to these principles, teams are strongly encouraged to establish their own tenets applicable to their function, and we use these relentlessly. They are at the heart of our decision-making process and our culture. Here is a tweeted tenets quote from Cole McCarthy, one of our many senior principal engineers, talking about his team's priorities. Within Amazon Web Services, you will find that security is job zero for every single one of us. This is a powerful binding principle for employees and their teams who build and run our services all around the world. If we quickly look at the footprint of AWS, our global infrastructure is comprised of 77 availability zones within 24 geographic regions, with announced plans for 9 more availability zones and 3 more AWS regions in Indonesia, Japan, and Spain. Within those regions, much like the building blocks of life, the periodic table, we find the AWS services. Now, over the last 14 years, AWS has been continually expanding its services to support virtually any cloud workload, and it now has more than 175 fully featured services for compute, storage, databases, networking, analytics, machine learning, AI, mobile, IoT, security, media, and application development, deployment, and management. And when you look at each of those services, you'll see a lot of what we focus on is the democratization of security. Because the biggest constrained resource that any of us have is our skilled security engineers. There are simply not enough humans in the world with the right skills to do all the security work that collectively we have. And we do have that problem at AWS. Hiring people is hard. We hire hundreds and hundreds of security folks every year, and we still struggle to keep up with the pace of our own business. Our customers say the same thing. So do we have a mechanism in place that allows us to keep up with the evolving business landscape? Now, one of the things that's really interesting about AWS is that it focuses a lot of energy and effort on scale. Now, the scale of cloud is of benefit financially. Organizationally, it helps support your business, helps you innovate new ideas at incredible speed, but it is immensely helpful in the security space. Many people are used to focusing on the security issues that occur in their business or their industry, but with millions of customers across an incredibly broad swath of industries, we see things before most of the rest of the internet can. When we see those things, we take that information, that knowledge, those signatures, the behavior profiles, and build that knowledge into the services that we vend so that every single one of our customers can take advantage of them. Not just the biggest banks in the world, but also the university student who's operating on the AWS free tier, who gets exactly the same experience as the big guys. That is very empowering, especially for new businesses when you don't have the expertise to build those things yourself. So we talked about advantages of scale. Just to give you some interesting numbers. In a month, we process 1 quadrillion observations in CloudWatch. That's 1,000 trillion. That power gives you an incredible statistical view of what's going on the internet. And carefully examining that and understanding what happens, we can build models for certain kinds of behavior. There are 230 services that have security, compliance, and governance features as part of them. We've got this incredible effort to perpetually raise the security bar. All services support server-side encryption. We are happiest when our staff have no access to your data, period. And encryption keys, with keys that you can manage if you choose to do so, is a part of this. Now, one of the things we don't have at AWS is a security operations center. At our scale, if you're relying on humans to see something on a screen, you're going to fail. You need to automate as much as possible and escalate the rest to a human. When we talk to customers, we talk about reducing the burden on manual remediation of security across the board. Here are the first 5 things to automate: ticketing, identity access management, policies, logging, threat detection, and alerting. Alongside automation, we talk about some of the very common goals for security. Encrypt everywhere, embed security in development, know who can access what, granular permissions, and of course, automate. Through the infrastructure services, internal experts and vibrant community of partners offered by AWS, we have earned the trust of over 1 million active monthly customers, including the largest banks, broker-dealers, insurers and market centres in the world, such as Allianz, Barclays, BBVA, Capital One, Guardian, National Bank of Australia, Nasdaq, Santander Open Bank, State Street, as well as the industry's newest innovators, such as Robinhood, Betterment, Monzo and Nubank. Customers love the fact that the scale of AWS reduces their security burden by reducing undifferentiated heavy lifting. But what has working with all these customers taught us about scaling the talent transformation to achieve this? Well, firstly, it has taught us that it's far easier to train a developer in security than to train a security expert to be a developer. This isn't necessarily new. For years, we've had the aspiration that developers and engineers can be our security engineers, our champions of security. But it has not worked this way historically. Bespoke silos of information technology have been the norm until the emergence of cloud computing. The difference has been using common cloud building blocks that remove the undifferentiated heavy lifting and burden. However, reskilling is not straightforward. There is a bunch of perfectly natural human reactions that we have to maintain the status quo. We need a holistic approach to reskilling. For those of us that have read the great Daniel Pink book, Drive, Daniel discusses motivation covering 3 primary areas. Firstly, autonomy, the desire to execute what we need to do in the way that suits our hectic lives. Secondly, mastery, the ability to be the best that we can be at whatever we focus on. And finally, purpose, what we do needs to matter to the mission of our business. So, we need to focus our approach with this front of mind. Now, when I was leading my own team on their journey, I was reminded of this great quote by Rosalind Carter. A leader takes people where they want to go. A great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go, but ought to be. So with the benefit of hindsight, what are the 10 steps that I have used myself and I have seen work with financial customers all around the world to reskill everybody to be a champion of security in the cloud? Step 1 is to know that this is a different journey for everyone, much like this picture where 4 folks are leaning one way and 1 person is leaning the other way. There will be highs and lows and some twists and turns. And then we have to remember change curves and think about how we're going to motivate folks to unlearn and relearn. 2020 is the year that the entire planet has been going through profound change curves. Denial, anger, bargaining, resignation, and finally acceptance are perfectly common stages when we are faced with inflection points in our personal lives and our career. As leaders, we need to consciously lead our teams through it. Step 2 is that we have to make agile teams actually work. This includes holistically mixing the skills, not just going halfway between agile development teams and waterfall-driven infrastructure teams, which we often see as wagile. This can and does happen when you are still leveraging traditional siloed infrastructure technology. Putting the different skilled individuals together in a dedicated team is the crucial key here when starting out and moving forward. This allows businesses' outcomes to become much faster when the team can self-service their needs and not have to go through gates to get to resource and services, but instead can operate within guardrails. They are all going to learn how to establish and build secure cloud infrastructure as code through APIs. Now, classroom training is still very useful. Virtual is fine. What is needed is dedicated focus and time with a range of cloud courses that will always have a security at their core. Step 4, as our CEO Andy Jassy likes to say, there is no compression algorithm for experience. So it's critical that folks have a safe space to allow them to build and experiment. Personally, when I was learning cloud, I used the free tier of consumption within an AWS sandbox environment. Anyone with a credit card can do this. Step 5, bring in some experts. When I was on this journey, the ability to bring in professionally certified AWS engineers from a partner and get them to pair program with each member of the team over 2 days was like putting rocket fuel into the team. At this point, it's really important that you make it real. Building something and then getting it live and operating it securely in cloud is crucial, as you will build your new muscles most effectively when it matters. Now comes the crux. How do you scale? One skilled cloud team who understands security will quickly become a bottleneck for your organization. How do we scale that for everyone? Well, nature has found a way to do this, and nature is no dummy. We can scale through a process of cellular mitosis, the ability to take our first skilled cloud team of perhaps 12 folks and split them into 2 teams of 6, and then bring in more human resources who might not yet have the skills needed, and then have them go through the same first steps that we went through in this list is super important. When this second team gets something live, then it's time to split the teams again. 2 becomes 4, and so on. This is how you scale. Step 8 is cementing the new skills in place and working hard to reward the mastery part of the motivation equation. All AWS courses and exams work to ensure that individuals have the ability to build and run securely as part of their curriculum. But the Associate Architect exam is the one to really focus on at the start, with a significant portion dedicated to ensuring the most commonly used security building blocks are really understood by all. Now, when you take a quick look back at some of the mechanisms we've covered, classroom, pair programming, sandbox access, going live, the final piece is ensuring that online training resources are perpetually available. You need multiple methods for folks to be able to reskill themselves at their own pace. And there is a magic percentage of certified individuals in your business that need to hold this AWS certification before you see exponential growth reskilling, and that is 10%. What we see around the world is that when this percentage of technical employees pass the Associate Architect exam, you then see a hockey stick shape adoption pattern occur. Finally, the last step is to ensure that leaders reward and recognize the effort on the journey to being a champion of security. Vouchers, gamification, t-shirts, these all help. When I was on the journey with my team and we realized that AWS certification was such a transformational key, I remember standing on stage and asking everyone to get certified. Sure enough, I proceeded to get a question from the front of the audience. When was I going to take the exam? An uncomfortable moment. Being able to walk the talk for leaders is utterly crucial. And while I didn't reveal to anyone that I was studying for the exam, it was with some satisfaction and relief when 2 months later, I was able to reveal that I too had passed the exam. Now, one of our customers who has taken this to a very high level is National Australia Bank. I was privileged that they shared their journey on stage with me last year at the AWS reInvent conference. Now, in November 2017, NAB announced a company-wide transformation to accelerate their strategy, and a significant part of that journey was, of course, to attract and invest in talent. Starting in July 2017, they had 7 people AWS certified, and they started lunchtime coaching streams. By August of that year, things are picking up steam. They now have 150 folks attending the lunchtime sessions. By November, they are out of space. Lunchtime sessions are now oversubscribed. By March 2018, 150 folks are trained, but only 15 are AWS certified. But they had big aspirations. When one of the NAB executives announced at the AWS Sydney Summit about their partnership with AWS, after 24 hours, 1,900 had registered for training. After 48 hours, 3,000 had registered for training, and they branded their growing efforts the NAB Cloud Guild. As of December last year, they had 4,500 plus employees trained, 817 employees AWS certified, and 1,134 AWS certifications were held by NAB employees. Incredibly impressive, and they are well on their journey. The ability to leverage the democratized, secure building blocks of the cloud and enabling everybody to become a champion of security is going a long way to solving the cyber recruitment challenge at scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Absolutely brilliant. A very inspiring presentation. Some real practical takeaways there. The importance of automation, like things like ticketing, identity access, policy, logging, threat detection and alerting, and a great soundbite there. If you leave your security to somebody looking at a screen in a room, you will fail. It needs to be automated. We all have to up our game. I can't imagine there's anybody who's doing that who's watching right now, but it's a very kind of striking image there. Also, bonus points there for the buzzword Wagile, which is a new one on me, a mix of waterfall and agile. That's a keeper. And a great quote there: there is no compression algorithm for experience. Fantastic. So to actually build, to scale within an organization, you need to deploy cellular mitosis. How fascinating. Okay, thank you so much for that presentation. And I'm sure there's lots of online resources for folks who want to find out more about that brilliant educational program. Okay, we are going to move on and meet the group head of global Global Human Resources at Standard Chartered Bank. Please welcome to the stage Tanuj Kapilashwamy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tanuj Kapilashwamy. I head Human Resources globally for Standard Chartered Bank. Let me start off by why are we having this conversation today? Even before COVID-19, we knew that there was a real skill gap, a real shortage of skills of cybersecurity professionals. It was estimated that approximately 200,000 cybersecurity jobs don't get filled every year. Late 2019, there is a very interesting research which confirmed that there are 2.9 million trained cybersecurity professionals, but the world needed another 4 million to be able to meet the challenge that was out there in the world, to meet the skill gap. This challenge has been intensified post the COVID crisis. The Information Systems Security Association, which is the largest global non-profit association of certified cybersecurity professionals, has tracked a 63% increase in cyber attacks globally since the pandemic began. They've called COVID-19 a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for hackers and online scammers. There's a variety of reasons for that. I think the cyber criminals have exploited vulnerabilities and security loopholes that have arisen as a result of people using much more of their personal devices, working from home. There is heightened activities on insecure digital tools, as well as increased leniency in access management, which employers had to do to enable their employees access third-party networks. As a result, an area where there was already a skill gap has even been further intensified. So the increase for cybersecurity professionals has increased even further when we were already facing a challenge. Our experience and our point of view very strongly is that we cannot meet this skill gap by having a strategy which only relies on buying talent from externally. So, our entire proposition has been built on building a sustained and a diverse talent pool to be able to meet this skill gap. So what is it that we are doing? What is it in StandChart that we are doing to meet this challenge? First, a bit about us as a company. We are across 60 markets, employ more than 90,000 colleagues. Given the complexity of our business, the complex local regulations, as well as our expectation to meet international standards, some of the challenges around cybersecurity are further intensified for us, significantly more complex than it would be in smaller, more nimble organizations. We need cyber talent across the organization. It's not one department. So we need them in our first line, which is largely trust, data, resilience operations. In our second line, which is risk and compliance, and our third line, which is the audit function. Within StandChart, just this year, we have hired approximately 500 colleagues, largely within frontline. And if you look at our data, 30 to 35% of that has been internal. So yes, we have continued to rely on external hiring, but increasingly we are being able to narrow that gap. And just this year, we've been able to get 35% of that talent pool filled internally. That number becomes significantly higher as we go more senior within the organization. So at MD level and above, approximately 70% of that talent has been hired internally. Our ambition is to make this 50-50 in the short term, and actually in the more medium term, flip this over and have 70% of the talent being hired internally and relying externally for only 30% of the hiring. Where we've had to do external hiring, it's been in strategic areas where we don't have capability in the bank, as well as markets where we don't have internal talent pools. In the external hiring, there are two specific areas we have focused on. The first one's gender, and I want to talk about that for a while. And the other one is focusing on early careers, really building a sustained pipeline of talent for the future across our multiple markets. Let's talk about gender first. There was a 2018 survey on cybersecurity professionals across UK, US, and Asia Pacific. And the data said that women represent about 24% of the cybersecurity workforce globally. The data also said that while women have higher qualification than their male colleagues, so 55% of them hold a postgraduate degree, as opposed to 45% men having a postgraduate degree, there was enough as evidence that they earn lesser than their male counterparts for those jobs. That's clearly an opportunity that we feel very concerned about and a space that we want to bridge. So, where we've had to do external hiring, we have significantly relied on increasing the talent pool of female candidates that we go after. I'm really pleased that the external hiring that we have done this year, about 35% of them have been women. And at senior levels, actually, the number is very similar. So, it's not just at junior levels. We've been able to position ourselves as an attractive employer to senior female talent. The other area that I want to talk about is early careers. It became very clear to us as we were thinking through a long-term sustainable talent strategy that we can't keep relying on the same educational institutions, the same talent pools that we have done before. And this year, for the first time, we have launched a very clear apprentice program where we've got cyber apprentices joining us for a 2-year structured rotational program. 50% of them are women. And interestingly, 50% of that apprentice program that we have hired are colleagues who are school leavers. So we have very strategically moved down to the school leaver category as a potential pool for future talent. We are in the middle of a very exciting program that we are launching in Singapore, where we are looking at a cyber outreach program targeted at school-going children to build awareness of the cyber threat, but also talk about the interesting job opportunities in this area. So a huge focus on internal hiring. Where we have gone external, which still continues to be a big area of focus for us, we have really dialed up our focus on gender, but also having a sustainable early careers proposition that is going to be, that's going to ensure that we've got a pipeline which extends for several years. Talk about internal. How have we been able to focus on internal? And I think the real focus for us has been reskilling, upskilling of our entire workforce. So as part of our future skills agenda, we've picked up 9 skills that are going to be really needed for banking in the future. The cyber skills is one of those 9 future focus skills. We've got an internal academy that's focused on cyber skills. It is enabled by our online learning platform called Discover. The academy is not just directed towards our cyber or our ICS professionals, 1,500 ICS professionals, but it is also very specifically targeted towards rest of the organization, especially those job families that have an opportunity to get reskilled or upskilled for jobs within the ICS stream. The take-up of the academy has been fabulous. I think within 2 weeks of the launch, we had 70% adoption rate. Very high adoption rate between the ICS professional, but a huge amount of interest across the rest of the organization. And the work that we are now doing is targeting the academy to specific job families in the bank where we believe, based on data, there is an easier opportunity or the real opportunity for us to be able to reskill them to take on cyber jobs. So it is an investment. It is an investment that you need to be able to do for a few years to be able to reap the benefits. But we believe it's a really important investment if we are going to be able to build a sustainable talent pool for cyber jobs internally. Just a few learnings from all of this. From our experience, what have been some of the learnings? I think having a one point of contact for all of cybersecurity hiring across the organization is important. We found initially there was hiring happening in multiple different places, and being able to have a globally consistent framework, a global set of standards, and having a one point of contact has helped us maximize the opportunity. We have focused a lot, secondly, on employer branding efforts. So both the recruiting professionals, but our line managers in the ICS space have done education sessions, external conferences, taken out time to speak to universities about the kind of career options available internally as far as cybersecurity is concerned. Last but not the least, we've actually challenged ourselves to take a few risks, right? Have a bit of an innovation in this space. We realized very early on that we have preconceived biases for the kind of people that we wanted to get in. And by challenging ourselves to target school leavers, by challenging ourselves to build new talent pools, go after female talent pools, women in the tech space, we've been able to broaden the supply of talent that we've been able to access in this space. Finally, huge amount of training that we have done both for our recruiters and our line managers, which includes training like unconscious bias training to ensure that we are not hiring in our own image, but challenging ourselves to hire expansively. In summary, we recognize there is a skill gap. The skill gap has been very well published, signposted. We believe that skill gap will increase even further. And it's our strong view that by continuing to have a strategy which is largely focused on external buying, we are not going to be able to bridge that skill gap. So the strategy we have put in place is a build from within, and where you buy, be sure that you are buying diverse talent, has been a strategy that has played out. And this needs to be supported very strongly by a learning agenda and a reskilling agenda internally. We believe this is really good for our workforce, really good for our business, and definitely good for the wider society. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tanuj. That was a pretty sobering presentation, if you don't mind me saying, some pretty shocking stats there. There was a gap in cybersecurity before COVID, and now it's absolutely going bonkers. It's really intensified. The InfoSec Association has tracked a 65% increase in cyber attacks after the pandemic, and she's described this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for hackers and online scammers. Things like work from home, using your own device, lenience in access management, this does need to be fixed, but there isn't really the talent pool to fix it there. Some great advice there. Work on 3 lines: trust data, risk and compliance, the audit function, focus on gender. Women represent 24% of cybersecurity function and are better qualified in many cases, but earn less than their male counterparts. In 2020, this is absolutely scandalous. This needs to be fixed. I know you're all going to join us in trying to fix this in your organizations. And it's really about upskilling the entire workforce with globally consistent standards, employer branding efforts to get new people on board, and take a few risks and train, and build from within. Fortune favors the brave. Fantastic presentation. Okay, we're going to move on and have a chat with a very brilliant cybersecurity expert. She is the Senior Principal Global Cybersecurity Evangelist and Strategist at Red Hat. Please welcome to the stage, Lucy Kerner.
Hi everyone, my name is Lucy Kerner. In my current role at Red Hat, I lead security thought leadership, technical and go-to-market strategy, messaging, and evangelism for security across the entire Red Hat portfolio globally. I also create and present security-related content to our field, customers, partners, analysts, and press, and I also present at a lot of cybersecurity conferences. I've close to 20 years of professional experience in software and hardware engineering, cloud solutions architecture, and more, where I work on various aspects of cybersecurity. So security resources have always been a problem. You're not always rewarded for doing security like you are when you develop a new business application quickly. This usually leads to cybersecurity teams being understaffed, overworked, and at the same time, these skilled cybersecurity professionals are in very high demand, and there's significant turnover in cybersecurity positions. In fact, many CISOs don't have a long shelf life. Industry research suggests that average CISO tenure is only about 24 to 48 months, with many packing their bags even sooner. A pre-COVID-19 pandemic study conducted last year by ISC Squared estimates a global cybersecurity gap of 4.07 million and estimates that the global workforce needs to grow by 145%. In addition, 51% of cybersecurity professionals say that their organization is at moderate or extreme risk due to cybersecurity staff shortage. So the sudden onset of the COVID-19 pandemic forced many companies in financial services and other sectors to suddenly expand their digital walls due to the massive increase in remote access. And for all too many companies, this turned the cybersecurity research challenge into a full-blown problem, exacerbating the cybersecurity skills shortage and then causing security to be overlooked or put in the back burner in many cases. As these organizations' focus and resources have shifted to things like shoring up, building from scratch, all these work from home capabilities across the business. And many security teams are now being forced to being directed to support general IT operations and simply may not have the chance or the time to apply security controls to a new system to enable remote working. And organizations are now struggling to adapt quickly with the increase of bring your own devices, which may lack security updates or corporate config settings, and then even smaller financial firms who offload their security to MSSPs were just overwhelmed by security demands brought on by COVID-19 as their customers. So this may lead to the MSSPs being unavailable due to dealing with their own cybersecurity, dealing with their own workforce disruptions. So now let's dive into some prescriptive tips on how you can take strategic steps to tackle the cybersecurity research problem. So my first advice to you is to tackle, cybersecurity is about people, processes, and technology. And so you should take a look at all of these areas to tackle the cybersecurity research problem versus just throwing more people at the problem. You need to look at ways you can to grow your existing resources internally and hire strategically. You need to make sure that your organization is both an appealing place to join and a rewarding place to stay. You also want to see what gaps you have in your organizational processes and technologies, and if that is also contributing to your cybersecurity resource problem. You also want to build a strong cyber resilient team by growing your cybersecurity workforce from within by further developing your existing IT professionals. As I said before, it's important that you grow your existing staff from within and make sure your organization is an appealing place to work, right? Especially since skilled cybersecurity staff are in very high demand and there's significant turnover. You want to establish things like internal security training, certification programs, and professional development programs. Provide that on-the-job work experience and access to career opportunities. And cybersecurity, and in general the IT field, is a continuously evolving area with new technologies that are constantly coming up that have to be secured, like cloud technologies, containers, Kubernetes, open source technologies, etc. And you want to offer opportunities to nurture and develop the areas that are top of mind for cybersecurity professionals, such as cloud security, risk assessment, things like that. And you want to motivate cybersecurity professionals to stay with the company, increasing the possibility that these professionals will remain at their current organization. Do things like providing that robust training, professional development, have a supportive management who supports professional growth and training and provides strong professional mentorship. Contribute to the cost of cybersecurity certifications. Provide that clear executable career path for specific cybersecurity roles. Encourage your cybersecurity professionals to take advantage of all the free online conferences, training courses, et cetera, that are now more readily available with all these online training going virtual due to COVID-19. And in general, establish a culture in your organization to never stop learning, since there's always more to learn in order to stay ahead of new technologies and bad actors. You want to establish a culture within your organization to encourage cross-collaboration, cross-organizational sharing, training, so that security is no longer just the responsibility of the security teams. You want to develop existing IT professionals, whether it's your developers, your infrastructure ops teams, and your security and other teams within your organization. And you want them to be cybersecurity experts as well, so you can grow the team from inside with this cross-pollination efforts. Especially as your organization is looking into consuming these newer technologies in cloud, containers, Kubernetes, serverless, et cetera, it's important that you establish these cross-collaboration and training efforts, since many of the security tools out there and ways of thinking about security is different in these perimeterless, ephemeral environments where everything is automated. So what can I do specifically, you ask? For example, when I was a senior cloud solutions architect for the North America public sector at Red Hat, I saw our enterprise customers who were growing their cloud footprint in their organization establish things like weekly lunch and learn training sessions between security teams, development and infrastructure ops. These cross-organizational teams would do things like quarterly mock breaches and tabletop exercises together, and even go to escape rooms designed to successfully escape the room by solving security puzzles together. Be creative with how you establish this culture of cross-collaboration, cross-pollination, and cross-training across the organization. My next advice to you is take a hard look at security tooling and resources. You need to have a clear idea of where are the cybersecurity skills in your organization. You may be surprised to find that these skills may live beyond just your security teams. Look at how your resources are currently allocated across roles in your cybersecurity teams. Roles that may be currently understaffed include security operations, security administration, risk management, penetration testing. Roles that may be currently overstaffed include compliance, forensics, operational technology security, et cetera. So also take a look at your security tooling. Are there people on your staff that are holding on to tools without really needing it? For example, I spoke to one enterprise customer, and he frankly mentioned to me that the only reason he was using some expensive vendor security tool was because now he can have a finger to point to in case something goes wrong. Are you as you're introducing cloud technologies in your environment, have you updated your security tools, processes, and practices to secure this new environment, or are you still using legacy practices, controls, and tools? I was at one enterprise insurance customer, and the security team there were trying to use one of their traditional legacy security tools to secure their containerized infrastructure, and they didn't understand why it kept crashing. They didn't realize that you can't use these tools to keep track of IP addresses in a containerized infrastructure where containers are coming up and down, since the environment is ephemeral. Are you using free open source tooling and libraries versus using enterprise supported open source products from vendors? And if you are using free open source tooling and libraries, is security in place to mitigate the risk of using these free open source tools and libraries? For example, how are you dealing with vulnerabilities when they get introduced? How are you ensuring that developers are not downloading malicious content from a public source versus trusted content that is vetted? My next advice to you is be strategic with hiring. Start by going after new workforce entrants, such as recent college grads who have degrees that are relevant to starting a cybersecurity career, including computer information sciences, engineering. And then when you hire professionals, remember that to not just limit your scope to established cybersecurity professionals. IT generalists have a solid foundation to contribute to an organization's cybersecurity practice. Look for people who have skills that would be valuable to a cybersecurity professional. Successful cybersecurity candidate will have skills across a wide variety of disciplines, from data security, Linux, hardening Linux systems, computer programming, cloud technologies, cloud security, security risk management assessment, assessment, security compliance, threat detection, remediation, network security architecture, monitoring, support, and then troubleshooting, things like that, right? And then look for more seasoned professionals who may have cybersecurity work experience and knowledge of advanced cybersecurity concepts. And finally, depending on your organization and requirements, it may make more sense for you to augment your staff with a managed security services provider, and their services. Next advice to you is to put a consistent automation strategy in place across your organization. Organizations have limited time, limited budget, resources, so you obviously can't fix everything, or simply keep throwing bodies at the problem, at all the things you have to do to keep your organization secure is not the solution. You want to implement a consistent enterprise automation strategy across your organization, a strategy that can interconnect infrastructure ops, application development, and all the activities performed by security operations centers. In the 2020 Cost of Data Breach Report, it states that fully deploying security automation can reduce the average cost of a breach by 95%, but only 16% of organizations have done so. Automation helps improve both security and compliance by helping you reduce that risk associated with things like human errors. Automation also allows you to bake security in from the start and allows you to do things like DevSecOps successfully. Automation allows for everything as code, infrastructure as code, security as code, compliance as code. And this is very important to do, since it gives you that repeatability, consistency, ability to share, ability to verify, and ability to audit, which are all key to security and compliance. And when you look at some of these recent cloud security breaches out there, like the Capital One breach, it started all out with a configuration error. If you back these configuration in an automation language that everybody speaks, everybody has visibility to, and it's backed by change control, so the minute there's a change, everybody knows about it, right? You don't have, you know from much earlier if there's a problem, right? Instead of finding out, 3 months later or whatever that you've been breached, right? So this and misconfiguration problems is one of the top reasons for breaches today, including recent cloud security breaches. So, automation allows you to do that continuous monitoring, continuous security, and have with controlled automated remediation. You want to take a baby step approach to automation. Things like start with a single project, automate tasks that are performed repetitively, like config management, software package and patch management, security vulnerability identification and remediation. Work iteratively and to deploy automation, measure results and adapt and plan for expansion and ensure all automation is verifiable. And in the ideal world, you want to have a common automation language for the whole enterprise organization. And you want it to be, but to be successful in achieving this goal, your automation language should be open, unbiased, widely adapted, widely supported by an active community, simple. You want to find people who can learn this language. You want to make sure that the automation language you set in place is easy to learn, simple, easy to write. You can actually find people who can understand that and pick up this automation language quickly, right? Something that's modular, something that is a lot of people can can pick it up easily, right? Like if it is based on a markup language, for example, right? It's an example automation language that has all of these characteristics is Ansible. So, what's my summary and call to action? While the global cybersecurity workforce gap is daunting, it's not surmountable. It's not insurmountable. Start by doing the things we talked about. Have a strategy in place to deal with COVID-19's impact. Tackle the cybersecurity resource problem not just by throwing bodies at it, but tackling across people, process, and technology. Build a strong cyber resilient team within your organization. Develop that culture of cross collaboration. Be strategic with hiring. Take a hard look at your security tools and resources, and finally implement a consistent automation strategy. Thank you for your time and hope you enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you so much, Lucy. That was a brilliant presentation full of very useful information and takeaways. I think one of the biggest, most impactful facts you shared there was there's a 4 million headcount shortfall in cybersecurity. That's just mind blowing. And I also thought it was very interesting what you were saying about the value that companies put on cybersecurity. I spoke to a gentleman called Professor David Simchi-Levi from MIT recently. And he spoke about the scourge of short-term thinking in companies. The fact that if you make a sale, somebody will ring the bell on the sales floor. And, if you make a big cost saving, you'll get like a big tick in the quarterly review. But if nothing happens, if nobody breaks into your servers, you don't necessarily get rewarded for that. It's just, you're supposed to, you only really get the attention when something goes wrong. So that's a real kind of philosophical question for companies to address, I think. Look at people, process and technology, make sure they join and stay, grow your staff from within, and have a real talk with your IT staff about legacy equipment and do you really need it in this era of virtualization and working with APIs and third parties. And again, the importance of automation. If you rely on one person looking at a screen, you will fail. Okay, so that was wonderful. Just the key takeaways there in summary. It's not insurmountable. You can do it, but you need to start now. You need to have a COVID strategy. You need to focus on people, processes, and technology. You need to build cyber resilience within your organization. You need a culture of cross collaboration, and you need to be strategic with your hiring and implement a consistent automation strategy. So absolutely fantastic points there from Lucy Kerner. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to wrap up for day 2 of Sibos Spotlight. My name's Oisín Lunny. It's been a pleasure to have your company here. Please join us again tomorrow when we're going to be looking at risk management and the world of worries. I hope to see you then.